Hello everybody, it's your boy Zack back to attack yet another video, and today I'm going to be reviewing Dune, the Butlerian Jihad. Now, if you end up wanting to read this or whatever, I'm going to talk about it a little bit, and then I'm going to get into spoilers, and then I'm going to give my overall rating at the end, and you can skip through the chapters and stuff if you want to skip over spoilers if you end up wanting to read this book. Anywho, Dune, the Butlerian Jihad is, it's obviously a part of the Dune franchise. I saw the newer movies. I saw both of them once, so I'm not a huge, I don't understand the whole lore yet. But I was wanting to get into reading the books, and I was recommended to start with this book, which is like the first of the prequels to the main Dune series. And it's not even which is written by Frank Herbert, and this book is written by Brian Herbert, one of Frank's sons, and but also Kevin J. Anderson, which I ended up finding out that guy, he writes he's written Star Wars books in the past, so I'll probably end up checking out his stuff because I have a bunch of Star Wars books and I'll need to get through those and stuff. And honestly, this really does read like a Star Wars book, and I just kind of put that together after reading that. I was like, man, you know what? That's why because I'm a big Star Wars fan. I just I really like this book. I did. Obviously there's problems with it, but I don't know. I really enjoyed my time reading this book, and after doing so, I've done I went and looked and see what people thought about it, and I had no idea going in that there was this big heated sides of the Dune fandom, that I think it's more in the norm to hate and not want to read these books, apparently, from what I've read. But others do seem to like it. I apparently seem to be one of those people. Maybe as I go along, I'll end up hating these, and I don't know. I'm sure the reason behind that is because a lot of people probably just don't think that these coincide well enough with the original Frank Herbert Dune books, which maybe that's true. I don't know. I haven't gotten there, and I only kind of remember the movies. I remember I liked them well enough to want to get into the books because I felt like I was missing something, and I think I definitely was. So yeah, anyways, I'm going to be beginning a big old journey because there's a lot of books in this series, and I'm going to go through these, and then I'm going to lead up to the Frank Herbert books, and then I believe Brian even wrote some sequels and stuff, but I'm going to read them all, and I'm kind of going in chronological order, which is probably the best way to understand the lore or whatnot. But I don't know, some people don't even consider these canon, but you know what, I also I don't personally like to consider some of the canon of Star Wars canon. So the newer stuff, a lot of that stuff's kind of junk. I mean, some of it's great, but some of it not. So yeah, I understand where some of these fans are coming from. I don't personally know from my experience just yet. Maybe whenever I get to the Frank Herbert books, maybe I'll be like, oh man, these are way higher quality than these books. But I will say, as someone who has only read this book in the Dune series, I will say that this was a great book. I really did enjoy myself reading this. Whenever I was first reading it, I'll be honest, first of all, I don't know, I was just I haven't read a book this length in a while, and it's not that huge a book size, really. It's 680-ish pages or so, something like that, and so I was just so much, but anyways, and so I started reading it, and I was like, okay, and then, eventually I get to a certain point in the book, maybe just a little bit before the halfway point, and then I'm hooked. And honestly, I would say the thing that really got me really invested in this book would be the AI character known as Erasmus. I loved him so much. I'm gonna get into his character. I'm gonna get into pretty much all the notable characters here in a minute, but for those who have read this book, Erasmus he's the scene stealer of this book, and like that's not necessarily a good thing for the other characters. Because he's like an artificial, intelligent, independent robot, and he's just really trying to understand humanity. And he's very eccentric in how he really tries to mimic humanity and try to understand like emotions and art, but he can't fully comprehend it, and he ends up just like going about so many psychotic, like violent, gruesome projects done to human slaves, and it's terrible. And like dude, I'm not gonna get into spoilers right now, but I remember just like the last lines of his story, and I was like, no, like just of this book, like I was just like, what is, no, you're messed up. Oh my gosh. Anyways, we should probably get into it. For anybody who doesn't know what this book is about, in a futuristic society, the humans spread out across the stars with their manufactured artificial intelligence, and soon enough experience a long, grueling reign at the hands of both their AI creations and a group of willing human participants turned machine, known as the Cymex, often referred to as the Titans. From this, mankind has become vastly enslaved in what is now referred to as the synchronized worlds, to their new machine overlords, ruled by the AI Evermind, known as Omnius. The synchronized worlds engage in a long war with the remaining free human systems. But what will it take for humanity to overcome this grave threat? The story has several characters in it, but the primary focus are characters such as Serena Butler, who is a politician in the League of Nobles. Xavier Harkonnen, a highly respected military commander who is also engaged with Serena Butler. Omnius, the AI Evermind, who is the leader of the synchronized worlds and has his watchful eyes all over the skies. Erasmus, the eccentric yet violently psychotic AI independent, who is also a valued human specialist for the Evermind Omnius. Yeah, he certainly knows his way around humans. Another big player is Vorian Atreides, who is a son of one of the famous Titans, one of the main Cymex thinking machine people. He's the son of Agamemnon, and he's a very loyal human servant to the thinking machines, and he actively tries to work against the free humans. Like he is like essentially a slave, but he doesn't care. He's just been so brainwashed growing up, and just being the son of this machine, this brain inside of like a fluid container that is operated by like machinery. That's his father, and that's also a character that we follow. Probably one of the more interesting characters in this book, next to say Erasmus. And of course, there's all sorts of other characters. There's people out in like the dunes. Dune, yeah. Like the dunes of Arrakis, and the sandy dunes of Arrakis, and like these tribes, and like this person from that tribe that gets outcasted out into the dunes on his own, and there's a story with that person. But there's also parts in the book that go over like sorceresses. They're like these women who have developed telekinetic abilities. Pretty interesting stuff. It also, it follows slaves from both humans and the AI. Like the AI have human slaves, obviously, right? But the humans of like that we're rooting for and stuff, they themselves also have slaves. So we're following that. We're following different artificial intelligences, different people trying to take down the artificial intelligences. And we also, we see scientists and stuff trying to work out like technical developments to work against the thinking machines. So what do I think about this book? I like I was saying at the beginning, I liked this book. I did. Some people don't like it. That's fine. Everybody has their opinions. I liked it. I did. And I don't. I will say that like I was going on about in the beginning of the video, there were parts at the beginning that I was just kind of like, let's speed this along. And there were sections, or rather points of view, or just parts of the book that I just like subplots I just didn't think needed to be there. But given what the series is and what it obviously goes towards. I feel like it was just kind of shoehorned in there. I'll get into that in the spoilers. So there's some parts in the book where, yeah, it dragged, and yeah, I think some of the dialogue is a little, it could use some work. It could use some work. I don't know. It didn't carry as much weight as maybe it should have, or maybe it thought it did. But there were certainly, like, even then, with some of the dialogue being written in a way that I thought was like it could have used some improvement. I really do think that when it really wanted to hit, it hit. Whenever I got to read Erasmus, the psychotic AI, I was always just very intrigued by his take on things, and he's really what got me into the book. And so, like, they excelled with that, and it really, his character and other characters and their stories. This book does do a good job of really giving you things to think about in terms of AI and humans, and, you know, their contrasts, but also their similarities. And I think that was just really interesting. There were some profound kind of ideals kind of put in here. Maybe not the most thought-provoking things, but I really thought it was very interesting, and it was quite inspiring to me as an aspiring writer. So I don't know, I liked it. I will say that this book managed to do something I not from recent memory that I think has really ever happened when I read a book. There might have been one, maybe two different books that I've read in the past that have gotten me emotionally so good that it actually made me cry. Maybe. But I can tell you with this one, I definitely did. There was a point towards the end of this book where something happens. I'm not going to spoil it. I'll talk about it here in a minute. But it happened. I actually legitimately cried, and I actually legitimately had to put down the book and get those tears and emotions out of my system. It was that upsetting, and, like, I don't know, just thinking about it, like, obviously it was a terrible moment, and there's been plenty of terrible moments and things that happen to people in this book. But when that moment came, and just like thinking about it now, it's just like, I mean, like, yeah, it's sad and terrible, but, like, I'm surprised that I cried, like, but I don't know, but I mean, it's understandable why I would cry at it, but, like, it happened, and I just, like, my emotions took over me, and I haven't had that in a book. So I will say that's probably also why I just genuinely really like this book, is because there were parts in this book, definitely that part as well, that really got me in the feels and really got me invested and kept me turning the page. There's just a lot of stuff in this book that really kept me wanting to get through the book. Like, there was a point, like, I got to, like, maybe about there, right? I read this much-ish at a certain point, and then stuff started to really get going for me, and then I just started getting right through it, you know? So it was, I will say, for people who do decide to go read this and haven't, I will say, and maybe you won't feel that way when you read it, I will say that it was kind of a slog to begin with, but by the time I got almost to the halfway point, or maybe the halfway point, I didn't want to put it down, and I kept reading at it, and so it picks up, is what I'm getting at. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I loved it. Thought it was a great read. Faux show. And really, I think it's just a great introduction to this series. Like, of course, like, you know, there's you know, people who, you know, like I've gone on to say, you know, people don't like these books or don't really consider them as canon. I'll eventually, I'm sure I'll figure out why at some point. But for now, this is gospel in the Dune series, and I'm gonna keep trucking along like it is. Yeah, I'm legitimately interested in continuing these. The next one is called The Machine Crusade, right? The Thinking Machine Crusade? No, I think it's just The Machine Crusade. I read like a couple pages or something of that. It looks like there's quite a time skip in that, so I'll have to But yeah, I'll have to get on that, and I'll do a review of that one as well. So yeah, if you like stories about artificial intelligence, you know, like a futuristic type society where humanity goes to the stars, but their AI creations kind of take over, this is definitely the book for you. I would go check it out. You know, there's a lot of things that it makes you think about, and the characters are engaging. Most of them are, anyways. And Erasmus, honestly, you should just get this just for the character Erasmus. He's one of a kind type villain, and I want more of him. I want more of him. I want more of him! Okay, now we are going to get into the spoilers. So for anybody who is thinking that maybe they'll read this at some point and you don't want to get into hearing any of that, I recommend maybe looking at the chapters of this video that I'm gonna put into the video after I upload it, and skip on down to the ratings for the book if you want to see that part, or just stop and go read the book. So we're gonna get into the spoilers. Let's just start with kind of the stuff that I guess I didn't like. It's not a bad thing that there was so many different characters and stuff. Like, that's fine. This is probably maybe one of the first books that I've read with so many different characters and so many things going on. I really liked it. I thought it was really cool. But I feel like some characters were just there to be there. The main one that comes to mind is Salim. He is, you know, he's the outcast from that tribe that kicks him out, and then he ends up like going riding worms and stuff. Like this thing. You know, like this is like a worm, and then like its mouth, that's his mouth, and then this is like a ship or something anyways, yeah, and I've only watched the newer Dune movies, of which at this point there are 2. You know, Dune Part 1, Dune Part 2, and I think maybe there was worms in that, the giant worms. I've definitely heard about them. I don't remember if they were in the movies. I know that they're in the like original like books and stuff. So like if they aren't, then they're gonna be more prominent in the later books, I'm sure, or the later movies that they adapt, and obviously the books. But so from what I understand, that's like a trademark kind of thing, like the sandworms of Dune. You know, I don't know if they're super influential to the narrative or the plot or the main story later on, but I do know that they are like a staple of Dune. And so knowing that, and then reading the Salim stuff, maybe like I think that obviously that Brian and Kevin are setting up stuff with Salim, because his story is just kind of meh. Like he's just kind of like he gets on like a giant sandworm. He gets on a bunch like different sandworms, and he like figures out how to wield them. He renames himself. You know, like he gives him like a legendary last name to his name Salim, and calls himself Salim Worm Rider. Right? Because he's riding worms. And then like he takes like the like spice melange or whatever you call that stuff, that like kind of like a drug that kind of like enhances a lot of things about you. He takes that, and then like he starts he feels like he's been given like divine like protection by his Buddhist Islamic religion, from the god Budala, and which I believe Buddhist Islamic is like, and maybe I'm wrong, but I mean it's not like it's like it's a combination that like that these authors like they combine like the religions or whatever of Buddhism and the Islamic religions or something like that. But either way, in this book there's like a religion called the Buddhist Islamics, and then they have a god named Budala, something like that, Budala, like Buddha, but mixed with Allah, Budala, right? Yeah, I mean like it's just, you know, both of them combined. But anyways, Salim, he believes that Budala kind of protected him, and then now wants him to protect these giant sandworms of Arrakis, as well as the planet, overall. And while there are interesting things I like with his character and stuff, I think it's just a bunch of setup. Maybe that could have been done a little either more interestingly, or could have maybe just been saved for whenever you're going to actually make this matter. I don't know. He kind of interacts with characters, the other type characters and stuff. They're trying to sell the spice and whatnot, but I don't know. He's just not a main player, and I don't know. Every time I knew I was reading Salim, I was just like, oh, let's get past this. I just didn't care. I just didn't care. But maybe that will change as we move into the other books. I don't know. So, and then I don't know. There's some characters, they were interesting, but then other times in the book they were not as interesting. Kind of like Zufa. I think she was interesting at times, but other times I just didn't care to be reading her. I think there's an interesting dynamic there between her and her malformed dwarf daughter Norma, and they touched on it a little bit, but hopefully they'll be touching on that more in the next book. While we're on characters and stuff, Teal Holtzman, he was a scientist, and I don't know, he was just so arrogant and full of himself and just such a dick. And which, I mean, good on the writers for making me feel that way towards the character. But then they're just the way he treated the slaves and how he spoke about them, how he acted towards them. I wanted him to die so badly, and I didn't get that. I didn't get that juicy Teal Holtzman death that I was yearning for throughout the book. There's many different times where I was like, oh dude, he's about to die here, and then he didn't, and that upset me tremendously. So hopefully he's in the next book so he can die. A gruesome death. That's terrible. Anyways, yeah, I didn't like that character. Obviously, the character that you love to hate the most is Erasmus. I've already talked about that. But, so what he's done with his, like, human projects, he tries to really understand art and all that. He does these terrible, like, psychotic, like, experiments with humans. Like, there's ones, like, with, like, twins and, like he's murdering one and seeing how the other like takes it and stuff like that. Like he's doing like terrible stuff to human beings, like slaughtering them, taking them apart, trying to understand them. And it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But yet and then he starts speaking, and then you're just so enamored by him. Like he really does feel like quite an eccentric character, and you just want to keep reading him. But like then he just goes and does some psychotic shit. And like earlier, I was referring to like the last lines. He talked about like how, like after like the defeat on Earth, like after all that, and he had to escape or whatever to planet Corin. He like talked about how he got a new set of twin slaves, and he's just like the last lines were something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing obviously, something along the lines of, there's just more interesting, fascinating things to do with, humans and stuff. More projects can be done. There's more work to do. Like he just insinuated he's about to do some awful, terrible, gruesome shit to these new set of twins that came his way. And I just I read that and I was like, no, stop it. You're awful. I don't like you, but I do. I don't know why. I messed up. Oh, man. But anyways, Erasmus, he's the GOAT of this story. The real main character, Serena, I liked her. I liked her a lot. I thought there was a lot of interesting depth to her character. It's interesting how like her sister ends up like marrying Xavier. Like the guy that she like was set to marry, she ends up like her sister. I forget her name. Octa? I think it's Octa. She ends up marrying Xavier after Serena gets like captured and is presumed dead for like a year, which I get it, but he moved on real quick. I personally thought like he was talking about he's so in love and all that, and then just like, and I get it, but like I don't know, they said something like it was like 7 months, and then he was like set to get married to Serena's sister. And I'm just like, and I remember reading earlier, back before Serena got, kidnapped or taken away to Erasmus. I remember reading a part where Xavier was mentioning how he found Octa attractive or something like that. And I was just like, you fuckers, you're going to do something squirrely here that I don't want. But then they did it, and man, and then, oh God, Serena, I feel so bad for Serena, okay, because like, towards the end of the book, the part that I cried at, and had to step away from the book for a moment, okay, so Serena ends up as a slave for Erasmus, and she has a child, she has Xavier's child, she raises him, and Erasmus gives her a lot of, like, luxuries that he doesn't offer most slaves, because he finds her combative nature and like just her line of thinking very interesting, and he just kind of like pleases her in ways of just like, giving her like more freedom than the average slave. And then he even passes down that freedom to other slaves as instructed by Serena. He starts listening to Serena to test like if slaves would be better workers for him if he was nicer to them and wasn't so violent. But they were still afraid of him and stuff, so he still didn't get the desired result that he was wanting, so he just ends up like killing people. He's a psycho, he's a freaking psycho. But anyways, eventually he gets jealous and like annoyed with Serena not kind of holding up to her end of the bargain, as she's so distracted with her like 1-year-old child, which she named after her father, Mannion. And so little baby Mannion, I think that's how you say it, that's how I'm going to say it, so Erasmus takes little baby Mannion by his leg out to the top balcony area of his wide mansion, and he hangs it over the balcony, and then Serena's like, she's like freaking out, and she's like, please stop, don't do it. And then he ends up like, he drops little baby Mannion, and he splatters a little baby splatters on the pavement and dies. In my delusion, I just didn't believe it. Like, I was upset, and I kept reading, and I was like, no. And then there was some sort of like wording that I was convinced as I was reading. I was like, no, because there's a bunch of slaves watching this, and this whole thing go down, and like I thought they were like gonna somehow grab the baby and save the baby, and then it splattered and it was confirmed dead, and I lost it. Like tears were rolling down my eyes. I was so upset, and I couldn't contain my emotions at just the fictional works and words of a dead baby, and I think that's something to be like kind of commended towards the writers for really evoking that emotion from me. And oh man, it was so heart-wrenching, and that is what they refer to, that is what the Butlerian Jihad is. That death of that baby, that is all these slaves are called into action at the sight of this dead baby. Like, there's been so much oppression, so much death, so much slaughter, but in the meantime, under like the under the noses of the thinking machines, unbeknownst to all of them, right? There's been like this little like rebellion, this little the human slave rebellion in the works, and it's just been waiting for the right moment, and then boom, a moment presented itself, unfortunately, in the form of a splattered dead baby, and it's awful, but it's what brought Butlerian Jihad is for Mannion Butler, for Serena Butler, for provoking the retaliation, the true rebellion against the AI, against the thinking machines. And it's terrible that it happened that way. And okay, so I was talking about Serena just a moment ago, and I said poor Serena. After that happens, she ends up getting away. She gets back to Xavier and her father, and she they're surprised that she's alive, but they're happy that she's alive. And then she drops the bomb, like she has Xavier's child, is dead. Named it after you, Pops. You know, she tells her dad, you know, Viceroy Manion. And you know, it's terrible. And they even bring the dead body back, and they kind of preserve it as like this memoriam type thing of what's stoking their fire to go at these, you know, thinking machines and Omnus and all that. And you know, and then she's like, you know what, this is awful, this is terrible, obviously. And she underwent, like, Erasmus cut her open and took out her uterus, and like, so she wouldn't be like stopping him, like wouldn't have like another child and distract their work together. That's so messed up. But he did that. Anyways, all this happens to her, right? And she goes back, but she's like, at least I have Xavier to go back to. And then boom, he is married to her own sister. What a giant middle finger these writers were giving Serena. That is so awful. Like, she loses her baby. She gets her uterus taken out. And then she goes back. She finally gets free. She's like, oh, at least I can have my man. And then boom, my sister's sleeping with my fiance. What the actual fuck? It's so messed up, dude. It's so messed up. I feel so bad for Serena. I really do. That's like the real bulk of what I really wanted to talk about in the spoiler section. You know, you know what? Let's talk about Vorian Atreides, who is the son of Agamemnon, one of the, you know, famous Titans, Simex. You know, the thinking machines with the brains and canisters controlling. You know, which, by the way, that's crazy. That's crazy. There was humans that actually, like, they thought, let's become machines. And so they underwent a surgery, took their brain out, put it in a machine, and became these tyrants. And then ironically, they used like Omnus to try to help that, and then Omnus took over them and made them their bitch. And then now the Titans work for Omnus, but they want to overthrow Omnus, and I just that was a pretty cool dynamic. That's the thing about this book. There was a lot of different dynamics. You know, there was the dynamics with the slaves from the AI. There's dynamics with, you know, the slaves from also just the humans. You know, and then there's like how the humans perceive those slaves and all that, like T.O. Holtzman, how he perceived them. You know, and then there's like the Titans, then there's Omnus, then there's Erasmus and the League of Nobles. There's all sorts of things going on here, and it does add for a lot of intrigue. And then, you know, there's even other stuff out there that I don't really hark on to too much, like the sorceresses, like Zufa, and, you know, her sorceresses, and then also you know, the tribes like Salim and whatnot. Yeah, so there's all sorts of stuff going on, and it is interesting. But I would say, okay, so one of the more interesting characters as well is Vorian Atreides, as, you know, like he's the son of Agamemnon, one of the Titans, as I said. And you know, it's crazy. It's like he's a very loyal servant, and, you know, obviously, you know, that's his father. To be fair, he's been brainwashed. He believes a certain aspect of history that he's been handed down from his father, only to be like kind of questioned whenever, you know, like his ideals and all that are just like questioned whenever he meets Serena. And, you know, he falls for Serena whenever, you know, she's a slave and he meets her, and, you know, she just talks down to him, and he's like, oh, my father's a Titan, how dare you, you know. But and I really did like Vorian and Serena's like back and forth. I kind of hope they end up getting together now that, you know, Xavier's with Serena's freaking sister. It kind of seems like that's kind of the direction they're heading. We'll see. I don't know. It was interesting seeing that character, Vorian Atreides, and, you know, he had like a friend that was an independent AI named Surat or whatever. And, you know, he also, just like Erasmus, tried to understand human nature, specifically in like their strategies and their humor. You know, because Vorian, he's like kind of like that smart ass kind of guy with his buddy AI. You know, he like makes jokes at his at Surat's expense, and Surat in turn also tries to, you know, kind of, you know, have fun and joke with him in his own way. And typically it doesn't pan out, but he does end up being funny unintentionally a lot of times, and he doesn't understand why. And I really did like the back and forth between Surat and Vorian. in their talks with strategy, because they played a lot of strategic games as they were, not busy and stuff on their ship, the Dream Voyager. And it's an interesting dynamic, and the way it came to a head towards the end, like Surratt, from what it seems, Surratt thinks that when Vorian ended up switching sides, which he did, he ended up switching sides and going with the humans after he learned that everything he knew was a lie, and really saw the monsters that these Cymex were, saw them for what they were. And, especially you would think he would have done it immediately after his father freaking opened him up, cut him up while he was awake and alive and conscious. And, of course, he was doing that out of an act of love, I guess, because he was trying to help extend Vorian's life, which I'm guessing that means he actually will probably be a big character moving forward, because apparently his lifespan is going to be extended quite a bit with what Agamemnon did to his body and whatever. So, anyways, yeah, so Vorian, he switches, sides and stuff, and, Surratt, he really did, it seemed like he thought that him switching and going against him and, like, deactivating him was some kind of, like, prank, like a little joke, like, which I found charming. I thought it was funny. I hope they end up, kind of working together again in the books to come. I really like Surratt and Vorian's dynamic, and also Vorian and Serena's dynamic. So those are the core characters, along with Erasmus and even Omnius, that I'm interested in seeing move forward. I'm fine if we drop Xavier, and definitely Salim, but I'm sure that honestly that would have been pointless if they don't really do anything with him in the next books. So whatever. Theo Holtzman, please come back just so you can die. That's all I'm wanting in the next books. But yeah, Omnius, he was like, he's kind of like the big bad, and like they used him well enough, I'm really hoping that in like the next book, or yeah, I don't know. I feel like they really need to make him more of a major threat, because while I don't know, it kind of seems like maybe Erasmus would be the final villain. I would kind of like that, honestly. I think I would prefer that if, like, because this is like a trilogy, like a prequel trilogy, so I'm imagining this specific type story wraps up at book 3. So either Omnius in the next book, in the next books, needs to be more threatening and needs to, like, obviously he's a threat and stuff, but I don't know, he needs to really show it to the characters. I feel like he really does need to, like, kind of really get the audience on board with really wanting to take him down on behalf of just the character's sake. Not that I want him to kill anybody or whatever. It's just I just feel like the story needs that a little bit. It needs that push. Otherwise, I think I would maybe prefer Erasmus ending up like betraying Omnius or somehow overriding him and then taking control, and he's the main antagonist for the end of the trilogy. That would be cool. I would be on board with that, honestly, because I find Erasmus a lot more interesting and engaging than Omnius, and I think it would be really cool to just see that character Erasmus in his psychotic ways and stuff, and just like his like logical type thinking. I think it'd be really cool to see him in a much higher stance of power. So maybe we'll get that, maybe we won't. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. And then at the end, Erasmus ends up lying to Omnius about like the events that happened on Earth. Like, he just doesn't tell him what's going on and stuff. Because Omnius, like his connection gets severed, and then he just has no like intel about what happened on Earth, about like the human rebellion and all that. And I'm assuming he'll get caught up at some point. But I think it's interesting. Erasmus, like, he lied, and that's just not something that these AI do. But he did it for his own benefit, and like it's almost like he's kind of becoming human almost. And I find that interesting, and that's why I feel like he would be a much more compelling main antagonist and not like a secondary. He was obviously kind of like the main antagonist for this book, but I don't know if he's going to be the overall main antagonist for this trilogy, or if it is just going to be Omnius, which is fine. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. All right, we are done with the spoilers, and now we are going to get into my final overall rating of this book. Here we go. Okay, so let's start off with the emotional impact. Whenever it came to the emotional impact in this book, like I said, I cried, but apart from that part at the end, where I cried and I had to put the book down. There were times where I was laughing. There was times I was just chuckling, and where I was really engaged, and like I was constantly wanting to turn to the next page and just move through this book. And I did. I moved right along at a certain point in the book. So I really think the emotional impact, they did a good job on providing that. So I'm going to give the emotional impact for Dune: The Butlerian Jihad a 8.5 out of 10. As for the characters, I think the characters were pretty good. Okay, there were some characters that weren't as interesting as others, and then there were some characters I didn't care for at all to begin with, and they never really changed throughout the book in my caring for them. But there was a lot of like characters that I did root for, and I really was impacted by them and their arc in the story. So whenever it comes to the characters of this book, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. And then we get into the plot. The plot for this book, I think it was a great plot, honestly. Despite its failings in this book, I think that for what it is. Now, and again, I don't know about the later stuff. I'm pretty much in the dark. Like, I know some stuff. Obviously, I watched, those two new Dune movies. And, I remember some of that. I really need to rewatch those. But as someone going into all this blind, starting from this book and moving on up chronologically, I think that, like, I'm not trying to compare it to, like, the later books or whatever, because I haven't read them. I really do think that this plot was great. And it hooked me, and it kept me really wanting to go for pretty much almost the entirety of this book. And that's why I'm going to give the plot for Dune an 8.5 out of 10. And now we're going to get into the dialogue. The dialogue, I think, was one of the more problematic parts of the book. There were some parts in this book, in the writing, where I did think things were just written very stale. I thought there could have been a little bit more depth to the writing. And I'm not trying to shit on it or whatever, but I feel like there's a lot more that could have been worked on. And but when it really needed to shine in the dialogue and really get me engaged with it and whatnot, I did like it, and so I am going to give the dialogue a 7 out of 10. And then for the world building of Dune, the Butlerian Jihad, I thought it was great. I really did. Like, for someone who doesn't know all the rest, it really does kind of bring you into the world. It makes you understand what's going on and like the dynamics with all the different characters and all the different players and all the different factions and stuff that's going on in this story. And you really get to see like an inside look to all these different areas and all these different character dynamics and like where they're coming from in the story. I do think like the sandworm stuff was shoehorned in with Salim. I really do think that could have been handled better, but stuff like that aside, I really did like the world building in this book. And then whenever it come to like the action and like progressing the world through that, I was entertained for the most part. Like whenever like the machines and humans were going at it, I was just like, what's gonna happen? I was quite entertained. I think some parts of the action was a little stale for me, but aside from that, I did like it. I really did. And I think that the action, the world building, all that encompasses the structure of this book is going to have to get an 8.5 out of 10. And so we're going to take those 5 different scores for the emotional impact, characters, plot, dialogue, world building, yada yada pinata, you know what I'm saying, dog. And we're going to crunch them all up. And the overall score for Dune, the Butlerian Jihad, I'm going to give it a 7.9 out of 10. I thought this book was great. I really did. I enjoyed it quite a lot. There were obviously issues with it, but that, not everything's perfect. And, other people will love this more than me. And then there's obviously people that hate it more than me. I did enjoy this quite a bit, And like I said earlier, that one of these writers at least is someone who has written and maybe even still writes Star Wars literature, and I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I've read a few Star Wars books, and liked what I read. At least I don't know if I've read him. I think I have. His name does kind of sound familiar. I need to re-look him up. But so honestly, if you are like a Star Wars fan, or if you like that type of sci-fi, I think this is probably the story for you. Like, this is something you should get into reading. Maybe you saw the Dune movies and you just weren't as you weren't interested in kind of seeing more about it or anything like that. And I really do feel like this is a great introduction to the Dune universe for someone who has only seen a little bit of it. But it's also a great starting point, because it really does kind of ease you into the lore, and it kind of really it tells you a story that is just I guess that's probably why a lot of Dune people hate it. It is kind of your typical sci-fi book. And so I really do feel like for anybody who likes science fiction, I feel like you should read this. You really should. There's a lot of great things in here, and I think you'll love it. But not everybody does. Not everybody does, apparently, as I've read. So hey. Anyways, for Dune: The Butlerian Jihad, I thought it was great, and I am really excited to continue this reading journey in the Dune universe, and I will certainly attempt to keep you updated as I go through these books. Yeah. And without further ado, fellow Zackalites, if you like the video, please leave your boy Zack a like and hit the subscribe button on your way out if you haven't already. Yeah, in the near future, hopefully I'll have more books and movies and stuff to review and put out here on my channel. And it'll be accompanied by my weird voice and singing and whatnot, as I do. And if you don't like that, I'm sorry. Anyways, I've been Zack Tech, you've been you. Thanks for watching.